Over the next, I would say, 7 days, expect a lot of news out of the NFL. Because there's the combine is coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Starts on Thursday for certain positions. But also, the teams will start letting players know that they like players who they have a fondness for, that they're not going to be retained in free agency. They're not going to find a new deal now. So it gives them and their representation a couple of extra days before everybody becomes a free agent to go shop their services. Thus, you get an announcement like we got earlier today. Shaq Thompson will not be a Panther next year. It stings. But it also makes sense. It's one of those things where like your heart hurts and your brain's like, yeah, well, what'd you expect? Let's first get shall we give flowers?
Absolutely.
Shaq Thompson's a really, really good player in the history of Pantherdom. He is third in tackles in Panthers history behind two guys you might recognize, Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly.
I've heard of those guys.
Yeah, possibly. And you could argue the Thomas Davis was a passing of the torch to Shaq Thompson because they did overlap there for a little bit. Shaq Thompson was a part of the team that played in the Super Bowl back in 2015. That was his rookie year. He was the first-round pick that year that helped them play in the Super Bowl, one that they failed to win, but still either the best or second-best team in franchise history. The nostalgia is there for Shaq Thompson. I mean, there's pretty much J.J. Jansen, and that's about it now for players who've, you have, and that's the long snapper, so no disrespect to long snappers. You're not the exact same as a off-ball, every play, tackling machine linebacker. There's not many connections back to that 2015 team anymore. You're more likely to see them squabbling on podcasts than you are to see them on the field for the Panthers as far as members of that squad and where they're making news. So the nostalgia is there for Shaq Thompson. Your heart is like, man, would have been really cool to see him retire a Panther. Would have been really cool to see him not have to go somewhere else to get one more payday. But the fact of the matter is, he's about to be 31. And he's got a pretty significant injury history. And he plays a not premium position. Right, that off-ball linebacker, not really an edge rusher, kind of sideline-to-sideline guy. The fact is, his timeline doesn't really align with the Panthers' timeline. If they were expecting to go chase like a Super Bowl this year, I do think he's a winning player when healthy, which is a big if. It's big, like possibly. But if you just need some veterans to go out there and play great, he can be that guy. The issue is the Panthers are trying to win like the 2028 Super Bowl. Right, they're trying to start contending for a division, probably 2026. They're trying to be a team that contends for the NFC, maybe 2027, and go from there. And by that point, you're looking at a guy mid-30s with a significant injury history and even more wear and tear on the tires. And then there's this other thing, and I'm Dennis, tell me if I'm going too far with this. Dan Morgan is the GM, okay? Dan Morgan is also one of the best linebackers in Panthers history.
Yeah.
To me, to get the full benefit of Dan Morgan's expertise, you kind of have to let him cook with the linebackers. And what I mean by that is let him go find the diamonds in the rough, right? Let him go be a better evaluator and know more about linebackers than other GMs and let that be part of your advantage. If because you have Dan Morgan as your GM, you only have to spend 70% as much money on that position to have a really good core than other teams would have to spend, that's massive. When you have somebody that's more of an expert at one spot, and because of that you spend more on the position, I always think that's backwards. I know it's not exactly apples to apples, but think of it like this. Kyle Shanahan's one of my favorite offensive play callers. Because he can scheme open a wide receiver regardless of who it is. So it never made sense to me that they were paying Deebo Samuel a bunch of money, paying Brandon Ayuk a bunch of money, and also Kittle and CMC. And I'm going like, wait a minute. You don't need that. You have Kyle Shanahan, right? Brandon Ayuk gets hurt. Jawan Jennings is a super stud. I'm going, if you can have all the production with Jawan Jennings, why in the heck are you paying a wide receiver like Brandon Ayuk $30 million a year? Shaq Thompson, just by nature of who he is, how long he's been in the league, he'll come with a certain price tag. I'm going, well, if you have Dan Morgan, you don't have to spend all that money on an off-ball linebacker. Let him go draft Trevin Wallace in the third, and maybe he can fill that role for significantly less money, and you can go spend that on, let's splurge for the number one wide receiver, or let's splurge for the edge rusher, or whatever you have at the top of your list, because we don't need to spend all of that on linebacker because we have Dan Morgan to make it up in the margins. So Shaq Thompson, awesome dude. By the way, like, going along with giving flowers, every report about him as far as a leader, as far as like a culture guy, is highest marks possible.
And he gets it.
Yeah, I'm sure they called him in, and it was very much like a.
Well,
go ahead.
I actually have the soundbite from after the season. He actually acknowledged, hey, he understands the leg injuries and everything in his age if he wouldn't be brought back. But here's actually Shaq from a couple months ago.
Yeah, I would love to end my career here. You know what I mean? One of the guys in history to play with one team. But it's up to them, right? These two injuries were fluky. Everybody knows about the one last year, and of course about this one this year. There's nothing I can do. But it happened. Get better and come back strong.
He gets it would be the way that you said it, and I would second. Also, let me float this one by you, Dennis. The fact that they're willing to let Shaq Thompson go, does that show confidence in like the foundation of the culture already being laid?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think when they took over, right, and when they were there, I don't think they would have let Shaq Thompson go if the contract were like 1 year earlier, like last offseason. I think they would have made sure he was back this year because they knew what he was to that locker room and what he could be to the Panthers. I think it's an acknowledgement from Morgan and Canales that we have a strong enough culture in that locker room that we don't need Shaq Thompson there to be the thermostat and always setting the temperature. Now we have other guys that can do that. The temperature's already at a good place, and we can go bring in somebody else, and they will adjust to what we do rather than vice versa.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially for the fact that they drafted Trevin Wallace, and Trevin Wallace got to learn under him, and then eventually, obviously, when Shaq Thompson got hurt, Trevin Wallace took over from there. But I think, Shaq Thompson was a big part of that, because even going into the locker room, I would go to games and then go into the locker room, like you could still sense his presence in there talking to guys and whatever it might be. You can still see his presence on the sidelines at games. So, he was still very much a mentor for a lot of these younger guys. And I think Carolina was pretty intentional about that this past season. Obviously, Shaq Thompson, they restructured his deal to bring him back last year, but having other guys like Jordan Matthews in the locker room, I actually just had a chance to talk with Jordan Matthews one-on-one about, he's like, hey, I get my role. I'm on the practice squad, but I'm also here to teach these young guys like JT Sanders and some of these other young players. So I think those guys were core into building the culture. Now it's like, okay, hand things off, let these other young guys take over.
Which, that's why it's so tough to ask veterans to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Shaq Thompson, you built the culture, you mentored these guys so well that we don't need you anymore. We can just, they're up and running, like things are cranking. You can go somewhere else, and it's like, I knew I shouldn't have mentored them. I should have made it seem like I was mentoring them so that they would still need me. It's like everything's good.
And for him, he's probably thinking, man, just 2 years ago I had 135 tackles, played all 17 games, and then bam, broken fibula, bam, Achilles.
At 28 years old, 135 tackles. You're probably thinking I got 7-8 years of being one of the best in the league. That's, by the way, and this is side note here, that's why guys hold out for more money. That's why they want that guaranteed cash. That's why everybody isn't always betting on themselves to go. Like, sometimes you want the stability because you could be 28 years old, 135 tackles, the world's at your fingertips, 2 wrong steps on strange turf, and all of a sudden you got to go out there and find a veteran I don't even know what the market will be for him. He'll be on a team next year if he wants to, but it might be super incentive laden. I don't know what the market will be for a player like Shaq Thompson.
It's the cruel reality of pro sports.
Mm-hmm.
You hit the age of 30, you've had a couple bad injuries, especially lower extremity. You're like, you're damaged goods.
Ironically, I could see him going to like a Jets or something where they bring him in to like set the culture, and he's like, "This is my job now.
Yep.
I just go into bad teams and teach the young guys how to be pros." Guess I won't be making the playoffs that often, will I?
Hey, check still clears, right?
Hopefully. If it's incentive laden, you're just mentoring. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can your incentives be someone else? We drafted a rookie in the 3rd round. If he has at least 100 tackles, you get an extra $500,000.
If he gets an interception, I get $10,000.
I don't even know if that's legal in the NFLPA stuff, but
probably not
in the CBA. But I hope it is.